We're back with another 20 minutes of The Alchemist. Jumping right into it. Where were we? On page 77. Maktub, the boy said, remembering the crystal merchant. The desert was all sand in some stretches, and rocky in others. When the caravan was blocked by a boulder, it had to go around it. If there was a large rock area, they had to make a major detour. If the sand was too fine for the animals' hooves, they sought a way where the sand was more substantial. In some places, the ground was covered with the salt of dried-up lakes. The animals balked at such places, and the camel drivers were forced to dismount and unburden their charges. The drivers carried the freight themselves over such treacherous footing and then reloaded the camels. If a guide were to fall ill or die, the camel drivers would draw lots and appoint a new one. But all this happened for one basic reason. No matter how many detours and adjustments it made. The caravan moved toward the same compass point. Once obstacles were overcome, it returned to its course. Sighting on a star that indicated the location of the oasis. When the people saw that star shining in the morning sky, they knew they were on the right course towards water, palm trees, shelter, and other people. It was only the Englishman who was unaware of all this. He was, for the most part, immersed in reading his books. The boy, too, had his book, and he had tried to read it during the first few days of the journey, but he found it much more interesting to observe the caravan and listen to the wind. As soon as he had learned to know his camel better and to establish a relationship with him, he threw the book away. Although the boy was had developed a superstition that each time he opened the book, he would learn something important, he decided it was an unnecessary burden. He became friendly with the camel driver, who traveled alongside him. At night, as they sat around the fire, the boy related to the driver his adventures as a shepherd. During one of these conversations, the driver told of his own life. I used to live near Alchemist, he said. I had my orchard, my children, and a life that would change not at all until I died. One year, when the crop was the best ever, we all went to Mecca, and I satisfied the only unmet obligation in my life. I could die happily, and that made me feel good. One day, the earth began to tremble, and the Nile overflowed its banks. It was something that I thought could happen only to others, never to me. My neighbor feared they would lose all their olive trees in the flood, and my wife was afraid that we would lose our children. I thought that everything I owned would be destroyed. The land was ruined, and I had to find some other way to earn a living. So now I'm a camel driver, but that disaster taught me to understand the world of Allah. People need not fear the unknown if they are capable of achieving what they need and want. We are afraid of losing what we have, whether it's our life or our possessions and property. But this fear evaporates when we understand that our life, stories, and history of the world were written by the same hand. Sometimes their caravan meet with another. One always has something that the other needed, as if everything were indeed written by one hand. As they sat around the fire, the camel drivers exchanged information about windstorms and told stories about the desert. At other times, mysterious hooded men who would appear. They were Bedouins who did surveillance along the caravan route. They provided warnings about thieves and barbarian tribes. They came in silence and departed the same way, dressed in black garments that showed only their eyes. One night, a camel driver came to the fire where the Englishman and the boy were sitting. There are rumors of tribal wars, he told them. The three fell silent. The boy noted that there was a sense of fear in the air, even though no one said anything. Once again, he was experiencing the language without words, the universal language. The Englishman asked if they were in danger. Once you get into the desert, there is no going back, said the camel driver. And when you can't go back, you have to worry only about the best way of moving forward. The rest is up to Allah, including the danger. And he concluded by saying the mysterious word Maktub. You should pay more attention to the caravan, the boy said to the Englishman. After the camel driver had left, we make a lot of detours, but we're always heading for the same destination. And you ought to read more about the world, answered the Englishman. Books are like caravans in that respect. The immense collection of people and animals began to travel faster. The days had always been silent, but now even the nights, when the travelers were accustomed to talking about the fires, had also become quiet. And one day, the leader of the caravan made the decision that the fires should no longer be lighted, so as not to attract attention to the caravan. The travelers adopted the practice of arranging the animals in a circle at night, sleeping together in the center as protection against the nocturnal cold. And the leader posted armed sentinels at the fingertips of the group. The Englishman was unable to sleep one night. He called to the boy, and they took a long walk among the dunes surrounding the encampment. It was a full moon, and the boy told the Englishman the story of his life. The Englishman was fascinated with the part about the progress achieved at the crystal shop after the boy began working there. That's the principles that governs all things. That's the principle that governs all things, he said. In alchemy, it's called the soul of the world. When you want something with all your heart, that's when you are closest to the soul of the world. It's always a positive force. He also said that this was not just a human gift, that everything on the face of the earth had a soul, whether mineral, vegetable, or animal, or even just a thought. Everything on earth is being continuously transformed because the earth is alive and it has a soul. We are part of that soul, so we rarely recognize that it is working for us. But in the crystal shop, you probably realize that even the glasses were collaborating in your success. The boy thought about that for a while as he looked at the moon and the bleached sands. I have watched the caravan as it crossed the desert, he said. The caravan and the desert speak the same language, and it's for that reason that the desert allows the crossing. It's going to contest the caravan's every step to see if it's in time. It's going to test the caravan's every step, to see if it's in time, and if it is, we will make it to the oasis. If either of us had joined the caravan based only on personal courage, but without understanding that language, this journey would have been much more difficult. They stood there looking at the moon. That's the magic of omens, said the boy. I've seen how the guides read the signs of the desert and how the soul of the caravan speaks to the soul of the desert. The Englishman said, I'd better pay more attention to the caravan, and I'd better read your books, said the boy. They were strange books. They spoke about Mercury, salt, dragons, and kings, and he didn't understand any of it. But there was one idea that seemed to repeat itself throughout all the books. All things are the manifestation of only one thing. In one of the books, he learned that the most important text in its literature of alchemy contained only a few lines and had been inscribed on the surface of the emerald. "It's the emerald tablet," said the Englishman, proud that he might teach something to the boy. "Well then, why do we need all these books?" the boy asked. "So that we can understand those few lines," the Englishman answered, without appearing really to believe what he had said. The book that most interested the boy told the stories of the famous alchemists. They were men who had dictated their entire lives to the purification of metals in their laboratories. They believed that if a metal were heated for many years, it would free itself of all its individual properties, and what was left would be the soul of the world. The soul of the world allowed them to understand anything on the face of the earth, because it was a language with which all things communicated. They called that discovery the masterwork. It was part liquid and part solid. "Can't you just observe men and omens in order to understand the language?" the boy asked. "You have a mania for simplifying everything," answered the Englishman, irritated. "Alchemy is a serious discipline. Every step has to be followed exactly as it was followed by the masters." The boy learned that the liquid part of the master work was called the elixir of life, and that it cured all illnesses. It also kept the alchemist from growing old, and the solid part was called the philosopher's stone. "It's not easy to find the philosopher's stone," said the Englishman. "The alchemists spent years in their laboratories observing the fire that purified the metals. They spent so much time close to the fire that gradually they gave up the vanities of the world. They discovered that the purification of the metals had led to purification of themselves." The boy thought about the crystal merchant. He had said that it was a good thing for the boy to clean the crystal pieces, so that he could free himself from negative thoughts. The boy was becoming more and more convinced that alchemy could be learned in one's daily life. "Also," said the Englishman, "the philosopher's stone has a fascinating property. A small silver of the stone can transform large quantities of metal into gold." Having heard that, the boy became even more interested in alchemy. He thought that with some patience he'd be able to transform everything into gold. He read the lives of the various people who had succeeded in doing so. Helvetius, Elias, Fulcanelli, and Geber. They were fascinating stories. Each of them lived out his personal legend to the end. They traveled, spoke with the wise men, performed miracles for the incredulous, and owned the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. But when the boy wanted to learn how to achieve the masterwork, he became completely lost. They were just drawings, coded instructions, and obscure texts. "Why do they make things so complicated?" he asked the Englishman one night. The boy had noticed that the Englishman was irritable and missed his books. "So that those who have the responsibility for understanding can understand," he said. Imagine if everyone went around transforming lead into gold. Gold would lose its value. It's only those who are persistent and willing to study things deeply who achieve the masterwork. That's why I'm here in the middle of the desert. I'm seeking a true alchemist who will help me to decipher the codes. "When were these books written?" the boy asked. "Many centuries ago." "They didn't have the printing press in those days," the boy argued. "There were no way for everybody to know about alchemy. There was no way for everyone to know about alchemy. Why did they use such strange language with so many drawings?" The Englishman didn't answer him directly. He said that for the past few days he had been paying attention to how the caravan operated, but that he hadn't learned anything new. The only thing he had noticed was that talk of war was becoming more and more frequent. Then one day the boy returned the books to the Englishman. "Did you learn anything?" the Englishman asked, eager to hear what it might be. He needed someone to talk so as to avoid thinking about the possibility of war. I learned that the world has a soul and that whoever understands that soul can also understand the language of things. I learned that many alchemists realized their personal legends and wound up discovering the soul of the world, the philosopher's stone, and the elixir of life. But above all, I learned that these things are all so simple that they could be written on the surface of an emerald. The Englishman was disappointed. Years of research, the magic symbols, the strange words, and the laboratory equipment, none of this had made an impression on the boy. His soul must be too primitive to understand these things, he thought. He took back his books and packed them away again in their bags. Go back to watching the caravan, he said. That didn't teach me anything either. The boy went back to contemplating the silence of the desert and the sand raised by the animals. Everyone has his or her own way of learning things, he said to himself. His way isn't the same as mine, nor mine as his, but we're both in search of our personal legends, and I respect him for that. The caravan began to travel day and night. The hooded Bedouins reappeared more and more frequently. The camel driver, who had become a good friend of the boys, explained that the war between the tribes had already begun. The caravan would be very lucky to reach the oasis. The animals were exhausted and the men talked among themselves less and less. The silence was the worst part of the night. When the mere groan of a camel, which before had been nothing but the groan of a camel, now frightened everyone because it might signal a raid. The camel driver thought, though seemed not to be very concerned with the threat of war. The camel driver, though, seemed not to be very concerned with the threat of war. I'm alive, he said to the boy as they ate a bunch of dates one night, with no fires and no moon. When I'm just eating, that's all I think about. If I'm on the march, I just concentrate on marching. If I have to fight, it will be just as good a day to die as any other. Because I don't live in either my past or my future. I'm interested only in the present. If you can concentrate always on the present, you'll be a happy man. You'll see that there is life in the desert, that there are stars in the heavens, and that tribesmen fight because they are part of the human race. Life will be plenty. Life will be a party for you, a grand festival, because life is the moment we're living right now. 2 nights later, as he was getting ready to bed down, the boy looked for the star they followed every night. He thought that the horizons was a bit lower than it had been because he seemed to see stars on the desert itself. It's the oasis, said the camel driver. Well, why don't we go there right now? The boy asked. Because we have to sleep. The boy awoke as the sun rose. There in front of him were the small stars that had been the night before. The boy awoke as the sun rose. There in front of him were the small stars that had been the night before. Was an endless row of date palms stretching across the entire desert. We've done it, said the Englishman, who had also awakened early. But the boy was quiet. He was at home with the silence of the desert, and he was content just to look at the trees. He still had a long way to go to reach the pyramids, and someday this morning would just be a memory. But this was the present moment, the party the camel driver had mentioned, and he wanted to live in it as he did the lessons of his past and his dreams of the future. Although the vision of the date palms would someday be just a memory, right now it signified shade, water, and a refuge from the war. Yesterday the camel's groan signaled danger, and now a row of date palms could herald a miracle. The world's speaks many languages, the boy thought. We stopped there. Page 89. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm glad we got to it before we got to us, y'all. We're gonna get to it every day. Or every day we get to it. Before it gets to us.